This is our ARRL forum. Dick is just back from Newington from the board meeting with lots of new information. Dick's a straight shooter. He tells it like it is, and we enjoy him coming out here. He's been out here every year for us since 2011, and give him a hand for that. Go ahead, Dick.
Thanks, Chris. I'm the ARRL Southwestern Division Director. I'm elected by the members in ARRL members in Southern California and Arizona to essentially run the league. There's 15 of us that are directors, and we meet twice a year, and we just met last weekend, and I'm going to report to you on what happened then and on what the status of the ARRL is. This is a forum. A forum's a two-way interchange. I say some things and you respond, and as far as I'm concerned, you're my boss. I work for you guys. You elected me, and if I don't perform up to your standards, you should elect someone else next time. There is an election coming up that I'll be involved in this summer. Am I likely to run again? I guess yes, and you'll have those of you that are in the Southwestern Division will have evaluated what I've done. How many of you are ARRL members? Essentially everybody. Is there anyone here who was an ARRL member and was in some way has stopped being a member in recent times? Actually, nobody here falls into.
Here I know of.
There's one or two of them here? Yeah. Okay, so hopefully we may hear some comments on why that particular incident happened. Let's start out with some status of external things that you can see about the ARRL these days, and one of them is the membership. ARRL membership is now down to about 137,000 with 122,000 full members. Those are members with ham licenses in the United States. If you're outside the United States, we have maybe 6,000 of those members, and maybe another 6,000 or 8,000. We call them associate members, people who have joined the league probably to get QST, who aren't hams or aren't hams yet. So that's the breakdown. Now, I went to the ARRL site where the directors have access to how many members we have, and wanted to see how far back I had to go to get to 137,000 members. And we're having a change here of something.
Pick you up, rattling the microphone. Let's put it over here. There we go. Thank you.
This forum is being recorded, so we want high quality audio for history, so that somebody can understand what I've said. So I went back to as far as we could go in the membership that's on the internet, and it was back to 2000, and it was still vastly higher. I think it was around 170,000 then. So over the last years, we've gone up and down. When the league raises the dues, the membership goes down. And a year and a half ago, we raised the dues from $49 up to $59, took printed QST away, added $25 if you wanted that, which made it $84. And the situation is lots of people didn't think it was worth it, and we've lost. Over the last 6 months, we've been losing about 1,000 a month, and it kind of tapered off a little bit near the end of the year, and then went back up in December, and what it'll be in January, I'm uncertain. But it's I don't perceive that as being good. Let's talk about something else that most of you have noticed. Back in May, the league had a ransomware attack. It's now 8 months later, and as you heard, everything isn't fixed. Let me give you a story. 3 days after the attack, I got a phone call from Bill Shell, N6AA, a member up in Lompoc area. And he pointed out to me, he said, you know, when I was working, I was in charge of all the computers at Vandenberg Air Force Base and all the computers at Cape Canaveral, and we had a rule. Within 8 hours of any outage, every computer had to be back online. And then he said, it's been 3 days and you guys aren't back online. What's wrong with you? And here we are 8 months later, and we're still making excuses. And the things that aren't back online are bizarre. They're like the ability for section managers like Rick Paquette or Bill K8TE to send messages to their sections, or me to send a message to the division. The software used for those is very simple stuff that should come back on the air in an hour. So I'm not sure whether the fact that these things are offline still is either they haven't gotten around to it, or it's deliberate, or what it is. It's just amazing that that kind of capability hasn't been restored to the volunteers who work for you for nothing to try to keep what I thought was a membership organization going. So I will point out a couple of other things. The Board of Directors formed a committee composed of a few directors and vice presidents that were supposed to be in charge of IT, information technology. And the original plan was to have external help from people who were knowledgeable about this. I've received several calls from people in the Southwestern Division who came across as being potentially knowledgeable. I mean, one of them is his full-time job is he's head of cybersecurity for Scripps Medical in San Diego. It's a small organization with something like 15,000 employees and over 3,000 doctors. And his full-time job is in charge of cybersecurity. He wanted to help and didn't receive a positive response from the committee. So I don't know what's going on. They're kind of praising the work that's been done by saying people are working very hard. But it's very nice that they're working hard, but I kind of at this stage think I'd like to rate what they're doing more on have they fulfilled what I expect out of them, and that's to get this the website and everything working again, and it's still not there. And the interesting things about this are, as a director, I have never received a list of these are the factors in our IT system that were impacted by the ransomware attack. These are the list of things that were never impacted. Here's the ones we fixed. Here's the ones that are still remaining. I don't know what it is. But I did get a promise from the CEO at the meeting last weekend that he would provide such a list. I haven't seen it yet, but it's only been a week, so hopefully it's still coming.
Did they pay a ransom?
Say again?
Did they pay a ransom?
The league paid a $1 million ransom. Now, the league didn't actually pay it. The league had insurance for this stuff, and the insurance company actually paid the whole $1 million, which is interesting. And then you would expect that our insurance cost would then go up by some substantial amount the next year. And bizarrely enough, the cost of the insurance policy apparently only went up like $15,000. So my thought is this insurance company is nuts, but the ARRL is benefited by having the policy with them so that we got there. Now, what happened with the insurance and the ransom is when the league paid the ransomware attack, it was assumed that the website was only encrypted. So if once we get the encryption code, we can decode everything and we'll get back to normal. Well, it didn't work out that way. Apparently, some of it was encrypted, but a lot of it was just plain destroyed. So they have to regenerate it or things like that, or find it somewhere. Now, people that are in this business have told me that it's possible to get things hacked by ransomware or some kind of attack, but what you want is backup that isn't in the same place that you have your stuff that was attacked. I mean, if they're sitting one is right next to the other and they have the same password or something, which I'm not sure of those kind of details, but all our backups were on the same system and apparently were all wiped out. So I don't know, is anybody responsible for this? Apparently not, but I'm a minority member of the board of directors in the political arena. Let's talk about another kind of external thing that you'll be able to read in the annual report. You know, the league puts out an annual report every year. The one for 2023 came out. You guys can all get a copy of it by either looking for it online or actually sending communication to headquarters, and they'll mail you a copy. So all these numbers we talk about are all in here. They're solid. They're approved by auditors. They're real numbers. The number I'm going to tell you is the league's investment portfolio at the end of 2024, 3 or 4 weeks ago, was the highest number that we have ever reported at the end of any year in the league's 106 or 7 year history. Is that a good thing?
No. No. We're not putting the money into the system to fix that damn.
Well, we've heard some no's, and the people who say no is, why are you collecting money and building up your nest egg instead of using the money to do something for ham radio? Yeah. And now we got some yeahs to saying, and that's my attitude. And I'd just like to report some details of that. We just had a presentation by Rick Paquette, the hardworking Arizona section manager. Rick gets reimbursed for things like mileage or stuff, expenses that he incurs on behalf of the league to do his duties. He gets a budget every year, but the activity in Arizona is higher as a percentage of compared to essentially almost any other section I've ever heard of. There's, 15 or more hamfests every year. He goes to almost all of them, and he overran his budget by a couple $100, and the league has classically had a program where if a section manager is going to go over by a little, he requests a little bit more money because there's other section managers who underrun their budget. This year, Rick did not get reimbursed for his overage, and I didn't think that was appropriate, given that we have 37 million plus in our bank account. I thought that could be taken care of. Another issue is printed QST, as we've talked about in I think this venue last year. The league had a program where you checked off on a box that you wanted printed QST with your membership. I gave these membership forms out when I would go to conventions and hamfests. People gave me money. I took their money on behalf of the league, and they expected something. The league changed it. They took their printed QST that people thought they had paid for away, and this didn't leave people happy. And what I found out, and I think I've said these exact numbers to you before, I was told that if we were to have fulfilled all those printed QSTs that people had paid for, it would have cost the league $1.7 million. And was that appropriate to have done? And I'll ask this group, should we have spent $1.7 million and had only $35.5 million in our assets, or should we have done what we did and now have $37 plus million. How many think we should have spent the money on that and had 1.5 million?
Hell yes.
Essentially, most of the group. So that's my feeling as well. Another way that the league hasn't spent money on what people expected is the QSL bureaus. Those of you who are new to ham radio may have not experienced what we used to do a lot of times. When we would make a contact, we would send people a postcard with our call sign and a little design on it, confirming the contact by mail. When it came to dealing with foreign stations who worked lots and lots of U.S. stations, the hams throughout the world have set up the QSL bureaus where, say, a foreign ham can send a pile of 500 QSL cards to ARRL in Newington, Connecticut, and they will get distributed through volunteer bureaus throughout the United States. Now, there's one bureau at least for every call area, like W1 has a QSL bureau, W6 has a QSL bureau, W7 has a QSL bureau, W4 has 2 of them. The QSL bureaus are run by volunteers. There's generally somebody who runs the bureau and does a primary sort of the cards. They'll get all the W7 cards and they'll sort W7As, W7B, W7C. They'll send a little box of all the W7B QSLs to W7BXY or somebody who sorts them and sends them out to the people who, the end recipients, the people who get the cards. Now, when people volunteer for this job, they had an expectation of what they were getting into. As it works out, some of the QSL bureaus were run in a way that they're financially self-sufficient. The people who run them have a program where you don't send the envelopes with stamps on them, you send them money, and then they deduct money out of your account every month when they mail it, depending on how much they've spent on postage. Now, when the people in the W6 Bureau took over, they got a message from the ARRL that said, number one, please go rent a middle-sized post office box for your part of the Bureau. That'll cost you $360 a year about, and we'll reimburse you for that. They also, the ARRL was reimbursing the, I don't know, $7.50 each for every box that got shipped out to the final sorters. And the league decided that, well, if some management decided that if some of these bureaus are self-sufficient, they all ought to be. Well, maybe if before you accepted the people to be a volunteer, you made it clear to them that they had a job of not only sorting the cards and getting them to the final destination, but they had the obligation to make their operation financially self-sufficient. They might have taken the job, they might not have. But those who took the job, only thinking they had to sort it, are now left with the job, how do I make this self-sufficient? And, well, I can, get rid of the post office box, and that'll save $360 a year. But what we did was we got a whole bunch of envelopes printed up with that as the return address, and we got a bunch of stamps so that people can stamp that, and there's a bunch of stuff, so they're having trouble doing that. So I would say my primary success at this last board meeting was to get the management to agree to have funded the volunteers for last year. So at least they're not that upset. Now, if you consider that small potatoes, I sure as hell do. The rest of what I report is not necessarily, as far as I'm concerned, something that benefited ham radio. I think that spending money to benefit ham radio is what the league should be doing with its money. You heard Rick Paquette talk about the grant that was given to the Yuma Ham Fest to make it happen. I reported 2 years ago that I got a motion passed that said we can use some of our 35 or 6 or 7, whatever it was, $1 million to keep conventions going. And the idea at that time was only division level conventions that were having difficulty. Remember, the Southwestern Division Convention used to rotate. It went Los Angeles, San Diego, Phoenix, Santa Barbara, Riverside, Anaheim, and a different club did it every year. Basically, all the conventions that were put on in Marriott hotels got to be too expensive. The clubs lost money, and after the Santa Barbara Club lost $6,000 or $8,000 the last time they did it, they didn't want to do it anymore. So it ended up that the Yuma Hamfest was a going organization, and they ran the division conventions for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. They were the only game in town, and they were not in a Marriott hotel. They were in the Yuma Fairgrounds. It was very successful. Everyone who went there liked it. It fit ham radio, and I'm very pleased to see it's back in operation again. But again, when I introduced this motion to fund them, my original goal was $1 per year per member per division went toward the division convention. And I kind of think most people would agree that's an okay way to spend the money, even if you don't go to the convention. Conventions are good. They get us to know each other. They get us to be friends with each other. If you find the people that volunteer to help out in ham radio organizations like ARRL, ARES, or whatever, they've met each other personally, and they're personal friends. They don't just necessarily deal with each other over the internet or over postal mail to some extent. So I appreciated that. And when my original objective was $1 per member per year, and the grant could be approved by the division director, and the president of the ARRL would have oversight to approve what the director did, just to make sure that the guys like me are kept honest. It didn't go that way. The board voted at that time to give control to staff. And what immediately happened is the ARRL CEO wrote a check for $150,000 to the ARRL Foundation. Now, a lot of people don't realize what you think of the ARRL is actually maybe two organizations. There's the plain ARRL, and then there's the ARRL Foundation, which these days mostly gives grants for scholarships using other people's money, ARDC's money. But anyhow, they then had the ability to distribute the money. We went for almost 2 years. They never distributed a nickel. So the $150,000 just sat in place. And they had made a bunch of rules which were hard to follow. One of the rules was you weren't allowed to get a grant for only 1 year. You had to promise to do the convention for 3 years in a row. Well, there are places where you get enough volunteers to do that, but seemingly nobody seemed to step up to say, I guarantee we'll do it for 3 years. So in the last several months, they relented, and I had discussions with the director, who's the foundation president these days, and they eliminated that, and the Southwestern Division got essentially one of the first 2 grants that were given. The first grant was given to the Rocky Mountain Division for about $3,000, and then the Southwestern Division got like $9,300. So we've got a nice grant that should make Yuma happen. The grant we got essentially pays all the rent for the facility. So hopefully the volunteers then can make the rest of the operation go, and I expect that they'll make money and continue. One of the things I think I've even talked about this at this event is what makes conventions lose money and go out of business? Raffles. When people buy $15,000 worth of prizes and sell $7,500 worth of raffle tickets, this isn't something that is profitable. And that is really why almost all these places lost money and stopped doing conventions. So I'm a great proponent for stopping raffles, but I get outvoted. And if guys who put them on want to have raffles, and they make the thing work, that's okay. So that's my take on all that. So that's kind of looking at the ARRL from the outside. Our membership is way down. Our resources are high up, and we still have damage from a ransomware attack 8 months ago. Let's now get into some of the nuts and bolts of what's going on inside the league politically. There was something that has been on the ARRL website since I became a director, and probably long before that, and it says, ARRL is a representative democracy. Its members control its policies through the power of the ballot. Does anyone think that's an okay thing?
That's organized mob rule.
It's, excuse me?
Nothing but organized mob rule.
Organized mob rule. Well,
You got to get on the ballot.
anyhow, I pointed out at the last board meeting that that's not on the ARRL website anymore. And I was told the lawyers had us take it off. Why? And the answer is, well, it's not true. We're a corporation. So I guess ARRL is no longer a representative democracy. We're a corporation. Now, you've heard me discuss the split in the board over the last several years, that there are people I'll call the Transparency Party or the Membership Party, and then there's another group I'll call the Confidentiality Party or the Corporation Party. The Confidentiality Party and Corporation Party are running the ARRL now, and this is one of their changes to our what we do. There's another quote I'm going to read to you, and this is out of a document. I'll describe what it is in a minute. The sentence is, it is very important, I'll emphasize very important, to understand that the core values are not the core values of the members. These are the core values of the organization that they have chosen to be members of. These are the values that they can count on from ARRL as their association. So, excuse me?
What values?
Well, I don't know. This is from a committee that was putting together a strategic plan. And so this is in their final report. I think we have adopted this strategic plan. So now the core values of the league are not necessarily your core values. They're the core values that some people have put onto the league. And if you want to join the league with that core values, hey, you're welcome to pay your dues and do so. So that's, I can't say I found either of those to be what I believe the league is to me. And let's see what else. So I'm going to describe what I think the league is today primarily. The league, as I saw it and as I would like it to be, was a membership organization where we're working to do stuff that benefits us, benefits ham radio, and allows us to contribute to society. Now I would say we are a corporation whose objective is to raise money from people somehow or other, and its primary objective is to sell ham radio to people who are not radio hams. And it's described in more detail as follows. Are most of you familiar with what we call the Teachers Institutes? The Teachers Institutes take place, they're like a week-long event where a school teacher, generally a high school science teacher or a math teacher or something like that, comes for a week and gets introduced to electronics. And ham radio is part of that. It has been going on since I've been on the board. This is my 21st year. And in all honesty, the excitement that the teachers get out of it comes from robots. They build little robots, at least that's what they used to do. The robots drive around on the floor, they control them with radios, and the robots do stuff, and they come away. They enjoy these events. And historically, we have not come up with quantitative data on how effective these are in doing anything. Were any of you involved in high school in the Los Angeles area in, say, the 50s, 60s, or 70s, where there was a radio club in essentially every high school in Los Angeles? One or two of you, yes. And how many of those radio clubs exist today? Gordon has it right, it's essentially zero. And the clubs were sort of an outgrowth of, most high schools had what we call electronics shop. When I went to high school, you had wood shop and you had metal shop. We didn't, I wish this was in New York, we hadn't invented electricity there yet. But Los Angeles had electric shop, and a lot of the electric shop teachers were radio hams, and they had radio clubs. There were antennas on the roof. I know plenty of my friends got into ham radio that way, but the education establishment has decided that they don't do that anymore, and we really don't have any. There's a couple ham radio clubs in schools in the Los Angeles area. There's one in Long Beach, and there's one in a middle school out in not Pomona or Claremont or somewhere out there, but they're kind of gone. But the ARRL is now increasing the number of these teachers' institutes from 3 to, I don't know, 25 or 35 or something like that. It's kind of a full-time effort. And what the league has also done a couple months ago is they're paying close to $100,000 to some company to develop a curriculum to give to schools or sell to schools that is going to get ham radio into the required curriculum for students to somehow learn STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And I don't know whether any of you think this is likely to be very successful, but what we have now is an education department of 4 people, and one of the jobs of the head of that is to go to teachers' conferences and sell this stuff to schools. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the concept of having a few teachers' institutes, seeing whether things work is fine. The change of converting the ARRL from sort of serving its members to stop serving the members, spending an awful lot of money on this, raising the dues to where we're losing significant numbers of members is not fine. There is an organization, ARDC. Most of you know it. It's the group that sold internet addresses to Amazon for over $100 million. I think they probably have like $150 million now. They're a private foundation. They have to give 5% of their money away every year. They have to pay taxes on it. So they're giving grants out between like $6 and $9 million a year. They ought to be funding something like this. Our entire ARRL education department, in my thought, should be transferred over to ARDC and let them handle it. They have the financial ability to do so and the need to spend money that way, and it absolutely is 100% in line with what their objectives are. One of the objectives of the league is to certainly service youngsters and get them in, but not to the extent, as far as I'm concerned, to destroying it where we're losing members like, a ship with a hole in it. Let's see, the board. Do any of you get the notices about what is on the agenda for the board meetings? What motions are going to be brought up? Not very many of you. Well, the board has kind of converted in the last few years over to motions that have to do with disciplining board members and directing them to do certain things. Now, Connecticut law, the ARRL is an incorporated corporation, nonprofit corporation in the state of Connecticut. And let me just read you three points that are they're the rules for directors of any nonprofit corporation in Connecticut. And Section 33-1104, General Standards for Directors. A director shall discharge his duties as a director, including his directors as a member of committee, 1, in good faith, 2, with the care an ordinary prudent person in a like position would exercise under similar circumstances, and 3, this is important, I think, in a manner he reasonably believes to be in the best interests of the corporation. I exercise my duties in what I believe to be the best interests of the corporation, following that rule exactly. There were a couple of motions to change the league's bylaws and articles of association to make the board able to define what a director should do, so a director doesn't necessarily do what he believes are in the interests of the corporation, but what other people believe are the best interests of the corporation. I'm not sure that this is actually legal, but anyhow, they bypass that. The objectives of these laws or changes in the articles and bylaws were to essentially allow one group of directors to vote other directors off the board. Now, if you liken this to government, what you would have is, suppose the Republicans take over the House of Representatives, they can vote all the Democrats off. Does that work? Maybe not. But the league is trying to do exactly that. So
Did that motion fail?
that motion was tabled until July. So it's still out there, and they're going to refine it, supposedly. So that's kind of temporarily gone, and you can read the details of that on the ARRL website. There is one motion that did pass that is kind of interesting. It's called Article 18, and what that has to do is it defines what the obligations of a director are in terms of elections. And I want to read you a few of the things to see whether you're you agree that that's what's appropriate for the league. Now, let's see. These are rules for the election again. I need quartzite rocks to keep my notes in order. This quote, a candidate may not make any comments directly or indirectly referring to their opponent in any campaign communication, oral or written.
Crazy.
That's because they don't want
Crazy.
corruption out.
Unacceptable.
No criticism.
You're not allowed to say that my opponent voted this way, I'd vote that way. What you're allowed to say, I guess, is I like ham radio, and I've worked over 300 countries, and I have a lot of these nice QSL cards, so you should vote for me. I don't know what it's supposed to say. Does anybody believe that that's appropriate for ham radio? Not only that, everyone in this entire group kind of opposes that. Here's some others. Because outside influences can create misleading bias and unfair advantage, ARRL intends that election campaigning and fundraising take place entirely within a division holding an election. Now, one of the questions I asked at the meeting was, well, outside influences can create misleading bias, but can inside influences also create misleading bias? And the answer was, well, we haven't figured that one out yet. So anyhow, that they passed it anyhow. So now candidates may not solicit or accept financial support of any kind from outside their division by any means. This includes using GoFundMe And here's another one. Except if acting as a member of the Ethics and Elections Committee, no ARRL board member may become involved in an election that is outside of his own division. This includes providing financial support, providing testimonials, campaigning for candidates, and actively engaging and supporting potential candidates. Now, at the meeting, I invited all outside directors to come into the Southwestern Division in case I'm running, and if someone runs against me and they want to promote this person, I want all the members of the division to hear what the attributes of my opponent are and why they should vote for him. I welcome it. If somebody thinks that another guy can do a better job, please come in. Please tell the membership why. Maybe they'll elect him. That's their job. So I kind of look at this. People have looked at this and kind of said, is this some way that the incumbents are sort of self-preserving their positions?
Yeah.
Does anybody think that what it might be?
We just
Well, you know, a few of you think that that's what might be going on.
we just had one of our guys that was running disqualified so the incumbent could stay in office up in Oregon.
Well, that's something I can get into in enough detail if any of you aren't sick of hearing me talking a little bit, but we'll do that after a couple of other points. But anyhow, I guess this brings up a question is, this particular motion passed by 10 to 5, and that's the essential breakdown of the confidentiality corporation party versus transparency membership party we have now. And you'll ask, well, how come you have that? How come nobody elects transparency guys to office? And you just heard a comment from somebody in the Northwestern Division that talked about their election, and they had a candidate disqualified. Now, the Elections and Ethics Committee is a committee of 3 people appointed by the president, and generally, apparently appointed. Some people think the appointments might be made on a political basis, and what happened in this last election cycle, there were 5 seats up for election. The Elections and Ethics Committee strongly influenced or disqualified candidates in 4 of the 5 elections. The 5th one is an interesting one also. The guy that got elected to office got elected because the incumbent, who is a very popular guy in the division, told everybody he was still running, so no one would run against him. And at the end, he never did run. So his choice for following on got into office. And afterwards, I heard from a prospective candidate that said, if I'd known this guy wasn't running, I would have run. So that's where we stand. Now, we kind of heard somebody here criticize the disqualification of the candidate for the Northwestern Division Director, and the guy that got disqualified is Dan Marler, K7REX, who was the section manager for the Idaho section, and a very active volunteer and kind of founder of something called Rat Pack, a weekly video presentation by a ham or a hams on technical topics, on emergency communications topics, on all sorts of topics. They have hundreds of videos that you can look at that are presentations. They covered the gamut, antennas, whatever it is. There's people doing that kind of thing, and as far this was discussed to some extent at the board meeting, and I was of the opinion that I was not pleased with what the Elections and Ethics Committee used to defend their actions. And Dan Marler has posted somewhere on the internet or on a posting exactly what happened. And I think without having the ability to have things written on a screen where I can point to them, it's kind of difficult to do that. But just basically, whatever it is that the Elections and Ethics Committee stated, Dan Marler put that out in a message. He said, I said the following, and the Elections and Ethics Committee wanted me to say exactly this. So you can see exactly what the Ethics and Elections Committee was saying. And Dan Marler, in any case, basically said, I sort of somewhat stand by what I say, but I want to make sure everyone sees what the point of the E&E communication was, and you understand fully, and you should make your decision based on seeing both sides of that issue. Well, the Ethics and Elections Committee, within like hours, disqualified him, and the claim was he lied, and I found no truth to that accusation. Dan Marler, everything he said appeared to be true to, as far as I'm concerned, and that still happened. There was another case in the Hudson Division where the incumbent candidate was given he was elevated from vice director to director, and then an email went out during the election period basically describing all his attributes. The guy is an honest volunteer in terms of licensing people, giving them tests and education and that kind of thing. So that's what he does that's good. But he had on his election site things that were absolutely untrue about his opponent. Like he said the opponent told people not to donate to the ARRL, which was absolutely false. And in several weeks of complaints, the guy hadn't taken this down, and so the Elections and the Ethics Committee allowed that kind of stuff to happen for a favorite candidate for a long period of time. Yet in Dan Marler's case, instead of saying, hey Dan, what we really wanted you to do was this, it didn't seem to balance out. So that's kind of how they got into power. They're still there. These modifications to what are called bylaw 46 and bylaw 42 are described by a fairly high-powered attorney to the league and anyone else who has read what he's written as, these are probably against Connecticut law, but the bottom line is anybody who gets disqualified isn't going to go and spend $20,000 of his money to get a lawsuit going, and who knows how long that's going to be in court, and how do you get to Connecticut to testify and all that. So basically the overhead and of trying to make this happen, they'll get their way by that. And again, I don't know whether anybody thinks that that's the way to run a railroad. You do things that are illegal, but it's such small potatoes in the line of the whole world that nothing's going to happen. That doesn't fly with me. One of the other bizarre outcomes of, or I don't know, outcomes, one of the interesting things in response to this lawyer's criticisms, we had the ARRL vice president who wrote this modification up, lobby for its passage with the following words. Essentially, this isn't, I might have a few words not exact, but the essence of it is, we should pass this so the board can get back to dealing with ham radio. So that tells you flat out what the board's been doing the last few years has been dealing with stuff like rules so that they can try to disqualify candidates and forbid them from participating in board activities. Incidentally, as we pointed out in the past year, apparently what has been called the shadow board is still operational, and that's essentially the confidentiality party. They meet regularly on the internet with the CEO. They discuss the motions, the board meetings. So when we have the meetings in Connecticut with the entire group there, it's not necessarily valuable because most of them have already made their mind up by listening to one side of the story, and so we have debate canceled.
Where does that stand in Connecticut law?
That's criminal.
Um,
It's a public.
It's
public-
illegal.
I don't. Is it illegal?
Yes.
It's illegal for a government to do something like that. Like in California, there's something called the Brown Act that you cannot have private meetings of government organizations where the public isn't invited and do that. I'm not sure how it applies to corporations. I mean, to me, it's unethical, but I use a different ethics textbook than a lot of the members of the board did, so there may be disagreement there.
Can't do that in an HOA. You cannot do that in an HOA.
A private corporation could do it, but it's a public benefit corporation. It's tax-free. They're toast.
Well, Bill
State
said
by state.
a private corporation can do that. A public benefit corporation, I'm not 100% certain. I kind of think they probably can. But to me, is that what you want out of the league? But there are maybe other things that I've said that
Legal or not?
you're not pleased with. Let me see what else I had to say here. I guess another thing I can do is what I've done in the past is ask the assembled group here of, I don't know, is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, around 100 of you are here today. How many of you live in a homeowners association, a ruled place? One, I'm going to count you exactly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now the next question is, out of the 11 of you, how many of you are on the air some way or other? Hidden antenna, indoor antenna, mobile, remote, permission of your HOA. How many of you are on the air some way? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 out of 11 of you are on the air some way or other. Now, the League is lobbying Congress to pass a law that makes it illegal for homeowners associations to ban ham antennas. I think it would be nice if that got passed. I think all of us agree it would be nice, but how big a deal is it when I see somehow or other 10 of the 11 of you that are impacted out of this group of 100 have done something? How much money do we want to spend on that?
But it's all limited.
Not much.
It's all what?
It's all limited.
All,
They're restricted and limited.
they are restricted and limited, but most cases that I see, people understand that. They move into an HOA, they say, I used to live in a house. I had an antenna with a tower. I don't want to take care of the yard anymore. The wife wants to live on the golf course. I don't want to get a new wife. So I'm going to put up with that, and I'm going to live with what I've signed up to do. They kind of accept it. Where do we go? Did anybody notice who got elected to the office of president last November? Do you think that guy is going to allow government to pass a law that restricts real estate from doing stuff? Maybe not. So I'm in favor of some kind of modest approach to kind of promote this stuff, but I don't know how much money we want to go spending every year on this. I'd like to see it pass, but you know, in all honesty, if you go to Washington and go to a lobbying firm and you ask them, hey, if we give you a couple $100,000, can you get this passed? Do you think any of them are going to say yes?
Nope.
No, none of them are going to say yes, because they're all honest with you. They don't really want to take your money unless they can deliver. Yeah, right. They'll all take your money. They're taking our money now. Every year we get reports from our our committees that are involved with this. We signed this new guy up. This guy is now the head of that committee. And how long has the league been doing this? Over 30 years. Do you think now in, I don't know, what, the 34th year they're going to be successful? I wish they were, but I don't know. So I don't know to what extent.
37 million in the bank.
And we have $37 million in the bank that we can get this. The thing is, most of us are supportive of this kind of activity because we would like to see all our compatriots have ability to put whatever antennas up that they can. But I mean, if it's going to kill the ARRL financially, I don't necessarily support it to the extent that that it should happen that way. The other thing I'd like to ask you is, I'm going to get criticized by people on the board for asking this question and coming up with these statistics. Do any of you think that that's appropriate, that I should be disciplined for learning what this is? No. Unanimous. Everyone thinks that learning that information is important to us making a decision as to what to do with our league money and our assets and what we perform for the membership. I even have our two friends out there clapping for me. There's actually two of them. It's called a representative democracy. Well, we're not that anymore. So the two guys that were clapping are outsiders. Right. So at this point, let me open it up to what I'll call questions, criticisms, comments, anything. I hear, see.
This is one of the bleakest reports I've ever heard about an organization I'm a member of. What can I do as an individual to change this? What?
The comment was, this is one of the bleakest reports I've ever heard from a membership organization. What can I do about it? And to me, the way you change an organization like this is to change the board of directors. Now, what happened with the last attempt to change the board of directors, it was unsuccessful because of the actions of this committee of the board. We'll have 5 elections coming up this year. One of them is, I'm up for election. There is an election in the Pacific Division, which is Northern California and Nevada. There's an election in the Rocky Mountain Division, which is New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. There's an election in the Southeastern Division, which is Florida, Alabama, Georgia. And then there's an election in the Atlantic Division, which is Pennsylvania, essentially Southern New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, and D.C. Now, of those five, if you're not in any of those.
No, I'm in California. I can't vote in any of those.
Well, you can vote in either Northern or Southern California, and if somehow you are able to influence the vote somewhere, you might get changed. To me, it is indeed the most disturbing report I've ever given to any group. When I used to come here, I would tell you exactly, good stuff about what the league is doing. The only, and this time I told you the good stuff was I got the funding for the QSL bureaus, a couple $1,000 reinstituted for last year. It's not instituted for this year, although I would like to see that happen. But it's, The other thing I'll point out is, remember, we talked about you had to be in the division. How many of you were in, group has got snowbirds. How many of you live in a division outside of Southern California or Arizona mostly? And it's, I don't know, about 25 or 30 of you. So it's maybe a quarter or a third of this group is from the outside. Now the question is, have I polluted your minds to the point where you should report me to your local directors and try to get me kicked off the board? Or is me listening to any of you commenting polluting the mind of someone in the Southwestern Division so that I'll take that and react inappropriately?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, free speech. Yeah.
Well, it's called free speech, and as most of you can understand, I'm a proponent of free speech, especially when it disagrees with me. I have to put up with it, or I'm not a proponent of free speech. And as you can see, a certain percentage of the ARRL board are not proponents if it negatively impacts what they want you to hear. So, any more comments?
I want to say this is a very enlightening conversation. I'm working a lot to promote ham radio in my area, and I've not gotten assistance from ARRL. I appreciate people coming up and speaking and telling me what's going on, because this explains what the problem is. Somebody asked what we can do as an individual. Well, the answer is, do you know people in other divisions? Maybe you can't go talk to them and promote them, but we can. We can get the message out, let people know what's going on, and say, this is what we need from ARRL. There's clubs out there that are suffering, and ARRL is not supporting them. I would love the HOA restrictions lifted, but I think saving the clubs is more important. And I think what you're doing, thank you so much. I'm afraid you're going to be disqualified in the next election, but keep it up.
Thank you very much.
If you're disqualified, we know you did your job.
Well, it's interesting to have a participant say, if you're disqualified, you know you did the job. Any more comments, suggestions, criticisms?
Dick, what's happening with this president-appointed board of members that are going to review the structure of the ARRL? That scares the crap out of me.
The question is, what the ARRL president was given the job of appointing a committee to review the structure of the ARRL and what's happening there. Now, we really didn't get a report from that group at this meeting. The same group was the one that was responsible for these changes to the bylaws that allow the board to vote the minority party out of office and stuff like that. There's questions about what kind of things should happen. Like, there's a section called Northern New York, which about, I don't know, 200 members or something like that. And then you have a section like Arizona with over 3,000 members. Arizona's, one of the most active. It's the largest. About 5 years ago, or 5 to 10 years ago, we had a section manager who basically retired because the amount of work expected out of him was too great. He wanted the state divided up into 3 or 4 or 3 sections, I believe. And to me, that wasn't unreasonable. Those sections would still be bigger than most of the other sections. Fortunately, we have guys like Rick Paquette who volunteer and works his rear end off and gets stuff done, and he's still going. So we're appreciative of that. But the idea is probably centered around a desire to change the board of directors, and the CEO has basically said that he would like the organization to be one like ARDC, where the board chooses the new members of the board. Like if you're on a nonprofit board of a hospital, what you do is you find people in your community who have a lot of money, and you try to get them on your board, and then they'll donate and put a new wing on the hospital or something like that. So the board runs itself. Now, in some corporations and also nonprofit corporations, you have a CEO who essentially picks the board. Now, our CEO would like to do that as well. Now, I'm not sure whether, I certainly don't want him to do that, because I don't believe he's done an adequate job in protecting our information technology environment, and I don't, there's other criticisms I have about him. But that's what they're trying to do, I think, and nothing's happened yet.
I'd like to point out that the CEO works for the board. The board doesn't work for the freaking CEO.
Well, it was pointed out that the CEO is supposed to work for the board, not the other way around, although I think that there's a substantial portion of the board who feels the opposite and basically takes direction from them now. That's, again, personal feeling. I don't have a solid proof of that. And it's not unusual. It was pointed out over here. Other comments, criticisms, suggestions?
I'm curious if you tell us what's the payroll of the top executives of the league? How much money are they soaking us?
What is the payroll of the top executives? Well, it was pointed out that allegedly this last year the CEO had a salary of $315,000 a year. And so it's costing each member of your $59 a year dues, or $49, whatever it was, about $3 of those dollars goes to support the CEO's salary. Now, also, you can look at what's called the IRS Form 90, Internal Revenue Service Form 990. All nonprofit organizations file it. It's sort of their tax return, and it lists the exact amount that the guy was paid. In addition to the 315 or whatever it is, there's another 35 or something, 40,000, I think around $35,000 worth of other benefits. Now, those aren't defined. I've asked for a definition of them. I have not received it. Now, back about 2 or 3 years ago, the board voted the CEO a $100,000 a year raise, given it 2 segments. $50,000 one year, $50,000 the next year. What I noticed was the first year they did it, his salary did not go up by $50,000. The salary went up by some smaller portion of that, but his benefits went up by more. So somehow I kind of thought that maybe he's got some kind of deferred payment plan, which is sort of like a salary, but isn't listed in the column with salary. So it's basically costing us last in the year 2023, which is the last year we have absolute numbers, it was costing $347,000 a year.
That's for one.
Yes.
What's the top?
The next one would be the CFO, and I think it's like $220 plus some kind of benefits of $30,000.
The 990 should list the top executives as well as what's being paid to former top executives, and I'm betting you it's well over $1 million a year.
I'm not quite sure what you said. The Form 990, I think, lists the top 5 or 6 people, and those, yes, indeed, all put together do income over $1 million a year.
If he's getting 300, it's probably $1.5 million to 3.
Well, it might be, but you know, he's by far the highest paid person.
But they have to report also what prior executives are also getting. And
Well,
they're probably
the
getting-
prior executives who are not getting anything anymore.
Not?
No, they're retired. The league doesn't pay them. If they went and they had a retirement account, maybe the annuity company or something is paying them. I don't know any details of their personal goings on.
Okay, the ones I've looked at in the past, they still pay past ones. So
Well, sometimes, if you have a change of CEO during the year, you'll see the last one there for part of the year, and then the new one for the also part. So you will see them in the transition year. But right now, the only CEO money is paid to the current holder. So in addition to directors do not get paid. We get our mileage reimbursed, and our, when I go to the board meeting, my flight is reimbursed, my hotel is paid for, my meals while I'm back there are paid for. Basically, I pointed out that the CEO is costing you $3 a year of your membership dues. The board, officers, and directors is costing you $1 a year. Your SCMs or section managers are probably costing you less than that, like 50 cents a year or something like that.
So basically, you're a volunteer.
I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid, but I get my expenses reimbursed. It doesn't cost me. Anything else? I thank you for your participation and hope to see you here next year. Also, I will be at Yuma. Maybe we can have more details there. Thanks again. Here, Chris.